Give us your thoughts on all of these various creatures of various distorted form that appear throughout antiquity.
The idea behind it all is to cross the species, which is a direct confrontation against the created boundaries that the God of Genesis said that he created this, everything after its likeness and kind, and said it is good. The idea of trans-species mixing, not only forbidden by God himself, brought about the judgment upon the earth, killing everything and everyone with the exception of 8 people. People don't believe in Noah's flood. But even prior to Noah's flood, the prophet Jeremiah spoke of another flood that predated the creation of mankind on an earth that was in rebellion. Even the myths of Atlantis, by the way, I don't believe they were just not real places. Atlantis was real. Lemuria was real. Mir was real. Shangri-La. All of these different mythical places have a lot of things in common with the face of the human on a sheep. It's at that point that the God, not a demigod, not a demon masquerading who wants to be God, not Lucifer, but they made themselves an image that they could create and they could be on the same level as God, and they made these horrific creatures, whether they were satyrs, whether they were lion men. In the book of Giants, it said that the fallen angels literally commingled, call it DNA, which obviously it was. They absolutely distorted, perverted, manipulated the DNA of the animals. The pre-Adamic civilization of angels and other beings not created in the image of likeness of God were brought forth, and they rebelled. The golden age, if you will, Manetto's Table of Kings. I'm going to throw some stuff out there. The Egyptian antiquity records, they go back tens of thousands of years. The map of the Creator, which is 500,000 years old. The book of Giants, the word book is a little misleading there because it's fragments, but it's all about the fallen angels messing with every form of animal. These things were messing around with the DNA, crossbreeding everything, and that's where the monsters of antiquity come in. That's where all the strange stuff comes in. That's where all the giant centipedes, millipedes, insects, birds, dinosaurs, all this stuff come in. And in my opinion, we're going to be there again. That's why it took superheroes / half men, half God, in some cases of mythology, to conquer these things. And so when I talk about genetic Armageddon, today's technology producing tomorrow's monsters, we ain't seen anything yet. And what the boys in the black lab coats, when I say black, I want to make this clear, that's the secret laboratories of the world that do such horrific experiments that Mengele would be the patron saint of these guys. In other words, they're that sick. We're about ready to be sacrificed. And when I say sacrificed, I'm talking on the altar of a supernaturally evil plan to destroy mankind in its entirety. This is why all the secret science programs, the vaccinations, the pharmaceuticals, all of the different plans to control and destroy people are on an accelerated basis. The goal is not to help humanity be all we can be, to borrow the Army's term, but rather to place those of us living now with a very different creature, to basically create a race of gods, little g's, which will then toss out the old humans, that's you and I, John, who will no longer be useful to have around except perhaps as amusing slaves. If anything, the old-style human beings will be an irritation or a reminder of what the transhumanists once were. You see, you remember the movie, obviously, The Terminator. Remember how Skynet becomes the controlling overlord and self-replicating machines continue to destroy mankind?
Sure.
It's the same thing. It's kind of like CERN and the Stargates out there, and most people don't understand what the purpose of Stargates are. The reason history repeats itself is because men don't learn from their past mistakes, and they become apathetic and indifferent, and in apathy and indifference, you offer yourself up for slaughter. God had the children of Israel slay every man, woman, and child that when they went into the promised land. that at a certain point everything was corrupt, meaning everything was corrupt, up until the time of Noah. That means when the Bible, the Old Testament says Noah was perfect in his generation, that doesn't mean he was morally perfect. We all know that wasn't the case.
True.
The point is that he was the only untampered with genetic stock. And so it said that God was so grieved that he had made man that it repented him. So the thing is that God builds an ark for Noah and his family. So when you look at that, like God destroyed all the men, women, and children, or certain Israelites were commanded to do that, it wasn't because God is the ultimate meanie, it's because they were all corrupt. And had he not given that command and order, there'd be no seed of his creation left. Why did Satan have some of his fallen angels intermarry with human women? Why? Why bother? The reason for this can be understood by investigating the greater context of Genesis. In Genesis 3:15, the first messianic prophecy is recorded. The prophecy declared that the Messiah would be the seed of the woman, and this seed would crush the head of Satan. What is happening in Genesis 6:1-4 is a satanic attempt to corrupt the seed of the woman by having some of his angels take on human form. And I might answer the critics too. That was both before the flood and after the flood. By the way, angels always appear as young males when they take on the human form and intermarry with humankind to try and corrupt the seed. Therefore, the events of Genesis 6:1-4 were a satanic attempt to cancel out the prophecy of Genesis 3:15.
The email says he is so right. Ask him about the bloodline of Satan on earth. The demons are here through the international bankers, the Rothschild, the Rothschild.
The whole bloodline issue it goes right back to Genesis 3:15, because Satan does have a seed, and that seed he's injected himself into the human race, and obviously wants to propagate his offspring from their inculcation as children. They're taught that Lucifer is the light bringer, okay? Matches used to be called Lucifers. The light bringer that is going to bring mankind out of his bondage to the living God, and that they believe that literally they've been given the divine bloodline. They believe that the control of money, Amsel Rothschild made the statement, "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who writes its laws." Then you immediately contrast that with Jesus' words, "The love of money is the root of all evil." What are we seeing right now, John, in the control of money? We are seeing the absolute subjugation, destruction, and the end to America's middle class. These people believe that they are the God-like ones, okay? I will be like the Most High God. They are of their father, the devil. And they openly worship Lucifer. And here's something that I'm not injecting this. I mean, some of these guys who are fabulous researchers have gone in and can show the bloodlines all the way back. Nowhere in the Holy Bible does it maintain in any way, shape, or form that Jesus had any offspring physically. He did not have sex with Mary Magdalene and produce a race, if you will, of co-Jesuses throughout earth. But unless someone understands the history, they don't understand that to control the money is to control life. And these guys are now choking the very life. These guys mean the international bankers. They are throwing the world into a global economic meltdown in order to bring about the New World Order under Lucifer, which George Bush Sr. referred to, 236 times in his last year of office? The international bankers claim to be literally the not only the light bringers, but the controllers of the destiny of mankind. They want the planet rid of 5.5 billion people, and that should make about 5.5 billion people rather upset. The realm of the jinn in Muslim theology and the end times is very present in their beliefs. Like I Dream of Jeannie, Barbara Eden in the bottle. Where did the promise of something that had been locked up coming forth, or the words abracadabra, the night hag, Lilith the night hag? Isn't it interesting that a night hag who basically lures a man to have sex and then devours him, literally eats him up as in a cannibal fashion, is that legend would be reappearing in the desert Southwest amongst the Native Americans? Remember when we used to be told about the moon not having any water and Mars not having any life? There is a total blackout to the mainstream of what's really taking place in space, what we really know about the planets. If the former head of Skunk Works, which is a top-secret governmental development initial program that was under Lockheed, basically came up with a statement, Bud Rich, at his retirement dinner, if the American people knew what we've done, that we've been beyond the stars, in essence, he said they'd be furious. When people look at the ending of the space shuttles, they think, oh, woe is us. It's a smart move to save money because we're so far beyond all that. We're hearing all the talk about Elenin and Planet X being the 10th planet, Nibiru, Gabriel's Fist. All of this stuff is classified under national security. Listen, the United States is to be divided up in 10 regions, okay? And they actually, you can go on and look up 10 FEMA regions. You know, it's a Hegelian dialectic. Hegelian dialectic is simply this. You create the problem, you provide the solution, and by providing the solution, you bring about the desired result. No clearer Hegelian poster child could be defined in the Patriot Act. The global chaos that the Illuminati demands. There is a supernatural evil hierarchy controlling the underlings, which are an earthly hierarchy, who have willingly given their power unto the beast, who have yielded that which God created them with. They have yielded, given their power over to Satan. May I give you what a four-star general said?
Sure, absolutely.
The weapons are thousands of years in advance because all we do is try and control the technology that existed in the past. They have a history in the Mahabharata and a lot of their Vedic texts of wars that are absolutely right out of the future. Zacharias Sitchin wrote a lot about, wars between God and men, but the ancient Vimana, the flying machines, the high-energy weapons, some of their statements, weapons with the power of 10,000 suns. We're talking about ancient technology that is so far advanced, and in a lot of ways it's nothing more than angel technology, because this is what's hard for people to understand. They accept Hollywood's demons as being the brilliance of fallen angels. Fallen angels don't usually possess human beings. A demon is a disembodied spirit. The Book of Giants and the Book of Enoch teach that the demons were the spirits of the giants who were killed. So they have supernatural intelligence, they have supernatural understanding. Believe me, they know history. And John, a good exercise is for people to study the history of science fiction. The intelligence community learned after Roswell that by putting things into science fiction and putting into the genre of science fiction films, they could absolutely control the information of anything that might leak by just passing off, oh, that's just science fiction. Yeah, they just saw that in the movie. It was a brilliant mind control and population control mechanism for the flow of information.
If they hit us with everything that they can hit us with, they'll have their sound guns up, they'll have their heat shields up, they'll have shock troops all over the place. We won't get anywhere near them.
There's no difference in the power structure, the cult power structure behind the Nazis and their attempt at racial purity. Just understand now, in the elite, they want only their bloodline saved and everybody else died. The elite are ready to occupy their shelters because just like the movie 2012, they have a plan to escape what's coming. They're not going to talk to us about Comet Elenin. They're not going to talk to us about Planet X.
Let's talk about reptilians in the Anunnaki, William. What's this major discovery?
Well, for years, people have been talking about these amazing ancient legends that are really worldwide about giant flying lizards and dragons that came to this planet and had a hand in founding civilizations from ancient China to Egypt to India. And in the modern era, we talk about reptilians, and people have a tremendous fear reptilians. And a lot of this, I think, can be attributed to the work of R.A. Boulay and his work, Flying Serpents and Dragons. And then certainly David Icke picked up on this and introduced this idea that there's this reptilian faction of beings that are actually controlling the world. They manipulate the bloodlines of some of the royal families, for example, the British royal family, and they're considered to be, you might even think of them as the heads of the Anunnaki. How do you reconcile David Icke's view of the reptilians with this ancient view of the seraphim as the highest level of beings in the Judeo-Christian tradition? What's going on here? Maya 2012 prophecy centers around the reappearance of their savior figure, whose name is Quetzalcoat, whose name means the feathered serpent or the winged serpent. So is this a David Icke-style reptilian being with a crocodile nose that's coming here to eat us? Or are we, in fact, really talking about the highest order of beings that in the Judeo-Christian angelic tradition? That is Quetzalcoatl also a seraphim? Now, I'm not saying that David Icke is wrong or that R.A. Boulay is wrong. I'm saying that there's a possibility that there is this other group of perhaps crocodile-nosed tall beings. But when we're actually talking about a reptilian race of winged serpents, flying serpents and dragons, in the ancient world, they're talking about the seraphim. They're talking about the highest order of angels. In other instances, they are portrayed as half human and half serpent. A classic example of this is the Sumerian creator god Enki. He's the one who's credited with crafting the human body, of altering it. When you see depictions of him, he's portrayed as a spirit, specifically a water spirit, and he's shown as half human and half serpent. There is something within us that has been programmed to, perhaps coming from the reptilian brain, to fear beings that are half human and half serpent. But in fact, virtually all of the God beings, including Jesus, have been connected with the serpent. Why we fear this is kind of strange to me when you have all of the greatest lawgivers and teachers actually and directly connecting themselves with this being. I think what's ultimately behind this, George, is some kind of just have to call it a conspiracy. There is a faction that is out there that does not want humankind to transform, that does not want humankind to achieve the next level of our spiritual evolution into light beings. They want to keep us down on the farm, so they freak us out, scaring us with the story of these reptilian beings that if you go anywhere near any of this teaching, you're in some kind of Illuminati plot that is here to kind of eat you for lunch. And that is simply not true.
Well, should we take the chance?
The Serpent of Eden. Our friend Mike Heiser, for example, has pointed out that Nakash, the Serpent of Eden, is in fact one of these beings, is the bright snake or shining serpent of Eden, is a fiery serpent. That means that the Serpent of Eden is not a reptile, is not a reptilian being. The Serpent of Eden is a seraphim, one of these highest order of angels. And in fact, in Sitchin's work, he says that the Serpent of Eden is in fact Enki, a being who sought to uplift us to the level of the gods and even to help us to exceed the capabilities of the gods and achieve our ultimate transformation into light beings. If we think of our Milky Way galaxy as the throne that is described, as the temple that is described in the ancient texts, then the Holy of Holies, where the throne is located, must be the center of the galaxy. What do you know? Many mystic traditions, shamanic traditions teach that the center of the galaxy is inhabited by millions of transformed humans who are existing in their light form. They teach us that the center of the Milky Way galaxy is the place that our souls came from. So what I propose or hypothesize is, well, what if we play along with this and suggest the throne of God, the throne of Jesus, is in fact the center of the Milky Way galaxy? This is where the seraphim dwell, and this is where the Mayans say one of these seraphim, the winged serpent, the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, will be emerging from in 2012. And
they believe in his return, don't they, right away?
Yes, they do. They believe in his return. He'll be traveling through a serpent rope. So all three of these depictions are in fact describing this cosmic alignment, 2012, and the opening of a portal or a gateway with beings coming and going through that portal or gateway.
Are they coming via a craft?
No.
How are they getting here? They're not.
Nope. Mayan symbolism suggests they're coming through this umbilical cord called a serpent rope that is likely actually a wormhole. And these beings that are coming and going, in this instance, in the Maya 2012 prophecy, is the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoat. These figures have transformed themselves into the Merkaba, the space-time light vehicle, and they travel the cosmos as light beings. Ezekiel encountered one of these. Elijah ascended into the heavens in a whirlwind, a vortex, that many believe is actually one of these Merkaba vehicles. Jesus appears to have utilized the Merkaba vehicle as well, and certainly the seraphim do too.
In some of the depictions that we see, ancient depictions, there are pictures of craft in the background, William. I mean, you've seen some of these.
Yeah. I am not a proponent of the idea that these vastly advanced beings are traveling. I should say this, that all of them are traveling in hard or technological metallic craft. The ones that I'm interested in are those who are traveling in these light vehicles. These are organic craft. They are light beings. And we're talking about a race of beings who are far more evolved than extraterrestrials who travel in UFOs. The beings that we want to catch up with, the ones that I feel like we really want to be paying attention to, are those who have already achieved the highest level of transformation, this high order of angels that dwell in the center of the galaxy.
William, do you believe the Anunnaki might have been serpents?
No, I don't. I think that when they manifested to the primitive mind, that they might have appeared to be serpentine because, again, they were resplendent, they were shimmering, they were shining, and ultimately the highest level of the ones I focus on, Enki especially, seem to be traveling through these gateways.
Enki, as you have reported, might have been denigrated, demonized. Why?
Well, his sole desire, according to the Sumerian stories, was to uplift humankind, to even allow humankind to exceed the capabilities of the gods.
He was on our side, right?
He was on our side, yeah, exactly. An entirely benevolent being, but it is his half-brother, Enlil, who's more militaristic, as he's presented in the stories, that doesn't want humankind to have these capabilities. One, because we would rival the gods in our capabilities, and two, we probably wouldn't need them anymore. And so those are two justifications for why Enki was denigrated, and I think it leads to this conclusion certainly this question that some being or group of entities, probably the Anunnaki, switched off or disabled critical spiritual functions of our DNA, neutered us in a sense, so that we wouldn't be able to match the Anunnaki and we would forever be subservient to them. Then they come into our sacred texts, such as the Old Testament, and implant these stories that tell us, oh, beware of the serpent of wisdom. Don't go near this being. Trouble lurks here. And so what happens is you have people that don't have any concept of their true spiritual capability. They think this is all that is, the human body I'm speaking of. Little do they know that part of our earthly quest is to learn the secrets of the human body, of our DNA, of the double helix, which was in fact Enki's hieroglyph, and activate these capabilities to overcome this, if you want to call it, diabolical switch off, turn everything back on, and light ourselves up. That is our goal. And if, to the extent that people buy into this idea that we can't do that, and people tell me all the time, how dare you say that people can become whole, holy, and complete? You sound like you're Satan. You sound that Satan would say that.
They say that to you?
Yes, they do. I get emails to this effect from people saying that that's what Lucifer would have you believe. That's what Satan would have you believe, that you can become whole, holy, and complete. How dare you, you pathetic piece of human garbage, believe that you can transform yourself into a glorious light being. I'm being maybe a little over dramatic here, but that's the sentiment. That's the basic foundation of Christianity, that we all are sinners, that and we're sinners because we don't match the glory of God. And the glory of God, the word glory means to glow rays, to glow rainbow rays. So if you're a sinner, it just simply means you're not in your rainbow body, and that pretty much encompasses just about everybody. But the way to overcome this is to activate our spiritual capability, to embrace it, not to be in fear of it. When you go into the Chicago Assyrian Dictionary, which is considered the ultimate authority on the Sumerian language, Nibiru is called the Nibiru. And the definition of the Nibiru is it is a star, a gate, and a crossing point. That these beings are light beings who travel the universe through stargates and wormholes in the Nibiru. I just don't subscribe to the 12-planet scenario any longer.
The bloodlines that David Icke has talked about, where he believes that the reptilians are ruling the planet right now.
These winged serpents that appear all over the place as seraphim, these aren't beings that are trying to somehow control the banking system of Earth. They have a little bit more on their mind than that. They are not interested in earthly control. They are interested in waking humankind up to their true spiritual potential. That's what this big game is all about. So if you're focused on which Rockefeller is doing what to which, pick another Illuminati bloodline, yeah, that could be a good use of your time, but I'm saying let's focus on what they're really trying to get us to, what they're really trying to withhold from us, which is the keys to unlocking our DNA. How do we connect with these higher order of beings? How, in fact, do we become such beings?
Hey, Mary, go ahead.
Mixing humans with animals, and how we have all these underground cities. And I believe that we obtained this very same level of technology years before the Great Flood, and we screwed up the planet, and you know, we blew it. And, you know, all the enlightened, you know, after we did that, there was all these enlightened people underground. And I believe that the fallen angels were actually astronauts that were coming back to our planet, and after years there was all these people, you know, just that were not from underground, did not have any technology, and they looked upon them as angels and gods. And I read a book called The Search for Angels, and if you know, the first angels were seen coming down from a mountain. They were tall men. They were really, you know, white skinned, and they had long hair, white and long beards. And I believe that they were astronauts, and there were you know, enlightened beings, and there were all these other people that didn't have a clue what was going on. And,
what do you think of that theory, William? Let's get his take.
Well, this goes back to Enoch, who we discussed earlier, who was taken up into heaven as the sole pure example of this pre-flood civilization that she's describing. Enoch was taken because he was a master of this esoteric lore. He was pure-hearted, and as a result of that, he's taken up into heaven and transformed into the archangel Metatron, whom some claim is actually a seraphim.